Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadys.
Do concentrates really make you higher than smoking flower? What are the 4 likeliest states to legalize marijuana come November? And how to pair wine with weed? We have an insider's guide. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, the 2-year anniversary of our first Vote Pro Podcast.
Wow. Hey. Yeah, it's been 2 years.
Wow,
2 damn years. Where does the time go? And, well, I'll tell you where it goes. It goes into making first-rate podcasting for our viewers. So we're glad you're here. We hope you enjoy. You have enjoyed for as much of the past 2 years as possible, and you will continue to try to make the next 2 years just as good or better.
Yeah, we appreciate everyone, listening to the podcast, and we would like for you to listen to our podcast in the future. But we kind of request that you don't go back and listen to the first few.
Yeah, that's a good call.
They were okay.
Gosh.
Yeah,
some of them were a little hard to. Well, we were finding our, sea legs back then.
Absolutely.
I follow a chef who does a podcast, and recently he's on like his 300th episode, and recently he did an episode where he watched his first one, and he just cringed.
We should do that. That was, I haven't listened to it since we did it 2 years ago.
Well, maybe we should do that.
Yeah, he was his own worst critic. He tore himself to pieces, but
really,
it was pretty funny. It was hilarious too. But
well, that's true with any podcast. If you go back and listen to the first couple, it's a cluster usually because you don't know what you're doing. You're figuring it out.
Well, the podcast in general is a new thing. It really is.
Right.
And now we've got so much competition. Since it can't be live audiences anymore. Everyone's putting content on the internet,
and most of the people doing podcasts are amateurs like us. So
so
amateur experts.
So how do we respond to this? And to tell you, audience, what we're going to do from here on out, from now on, we are going to start doing video podcasts. We're going to video as well. We will still release our weekly audio. But we are going to add video from now on.
Despite the fact
in the near future, we're going to.
It's a whole new dimension, you might say.
We have faces for radio.
You get to see our ugly mugs.
You get to see trust us, folks, we've got face for radio.
Yep. Got to get some green screens.
To put in front of us.
Yeah.
Right now, you get...
So, Jay, before we get started, do you have any state updates?
You know what? My state update this week, because is going to be an article.
All right.
And the article is from the Motley Fool, Sean Williams. The title of the article is The 4 Likeliest States to Legalize Marijuana in November. Okay. So there are actually about 12 states, more or less, 12 states that have pending legislation to vote on by the public, either, initiatives or ballot initiatives or something on their scheduled to be on their ballots in November. There are a couple states that are still trying to get the signatures that are required, which is really difficult now during this pandemic. So this is according
to, as a side note right now, the DC Cannabis campaign just announced that they're trying to get signatures to get a recreational regulation system set up. And
cool.
So now you can go online, go to the DC Cannabis campaign, and you
sign a petition.
If you live in D.C., you can sign there.
I didn't know that. I just didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Well,
very recent.
Despite the numerous kind of growing pains that we've seen through the cannabis industry over the last year and a half, and then we have this whole thing with the coronavirus thing, it's still one of the fastest expanding industries on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just gone nuts. After legal sales, just shy of $11 billion, that's worldwide. In 2018, Wall Street has estimated that global weed sales will reach anywhere from $50 to $200 billion in the next 10 years. So this is going to be a huge part of the economy. Sector. It's going to be a big sector. Yeah. And of course, the U.S. will be right in the center of that. The United States is already responsible for the lion's share of sales of legal weed, despite the fact that it's illegal federally.
Are they saying this year? I think I read this morning. This year they're saying it's going to be $20 billion sales in the United States.
Yeah.
Or the last year it's been $20 billion. Maybe and then last year there's been $20 billion.
Of course, it's important to realize that there always has been that much in sales. We're talking about now legal sales.
No, actually, no, Phil. It's actually more than that.
Way more than that.
The illegal market is actually way more than that.
Oh, no, that's what I mean. Yeah.
How many
But
states?
he's saying that $20 billion has always been spent. Plus,
this is not a growing industry. It's just an industry coming out of the closet.
That's it.
But what do you think the total is? Is it $50 billion?
Who knows?
What's spent on cannabis a year?
No, I mean, just California alone, they say that three-quarters of the sales are illegal, black market. So do the math there. I mean, if it's the case,
a lot of dough. That's
a bunch of money. So here are the states that Sean Williams from Motley Crue is predicting. Number 1 is New Jersey. Perhaps the state with the best chance of legalization is the Garden State. In December, New Jersey's 2 legislative houses voted very decisively in favor of putting a constitutional amendment on the November ballot that would legalize recreational cannabis. According to Monmouth University poll released April, 61% of New Jersey voters favor the legalization of adult use cannabis, which would appear to signal a victory in November. Of course, Curaleaf, in his article, he names a couple of companies to invest in, of course, in those states because it's Motley Fool. Curaleaf already has a medical marijuana presence in the Garden State, and it will likely aim to use its deep pockets to build a considerably larger presence in what could become it could be $1 billion a year sales. Just in adult use in New Jersey could be $1 billion. So the second state is Arizona.
Okay.
Although Arizona has 5 separate marijuana initiatives being considered at the moment, and none of them are a lock to make it into the ballot, it too looks to have an inside path to adult use legislation. Back in 2016, Arizona was the only one of 9 states whose medical or recreational cannabis initiative or amendment did not pass. Arizona's Proposition 205 came incredibly close, with yes votes at about 48%. So it just missed it. History has shown that when adult use legalization initiatives wind up on a ballot a second time following an initial defeat, they always pass. Right?
Yeah, I would imagine, especially if it's a close one, like the last one was.
Yeah, even back in the day, California, Oregon, the early guys, they all failed the first time.
And why is that? Because God knows in some situations it was because the legislation or the regulations they were trying to pass were shitty.
Right.
And even the people in favor of cannabis didn't vote for it.
Yes,
that's
in many
true.
cases. They were like, let's
so
get it
they
right
go
first.
back, they rewrite the legislation, and they get the people on board who would have been but weren't.
That happened in California and Ohio.
And Oregon. And Washington, I believe.
Right.
The next one is Mississippi. Yeah. Mississippi, what? That's right, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Despite being an historically conservative state, conservatives are less likely, obviously, to support legalization as a trend. Mississippi looks to have a really good shot at joining the other 33 states that previously legalized medical programs. Mississippi voters will face up to 2 questions, all right, when they go to the ballot in November. The first requests their vote yes or no on a medical program, okay? Right. And if they vote yes, then they have to select either one of 2 programs. When they do that, the first one is Initiative 65, and the second one is Initiative 65A. 65 allows for more tax use of medical cannabis by patients. I'm sorry, more lax use. So it lets you, it allows for a lot more, up to 20 different, ailments. You can go get it. The second one.
So if you have a bad shoulder, you can get it.
They don't list what they are, but that's
a lot of states you have to be like one group foot in the grave to get it. Now
that's what the second one is. Okay. Meanwhile, Initiative 65A would make smoking medical weed available only to terminally ill patients and dramatically increase the medical oversight of patients. So that's almost not worth it, right? I mean, that's not even really a medical program. So you can only get it if you're dying of cancer or whatever. That's right. Silly. All right. So, and final, let me just say this. In a survey conducted by Millsaps College in Scrim Strategies earlier this year, they found that 67% of respondents favored the idea of legalizing access to medical cannabis, with just 24 opposed. So that's a pretty good number. So the real question is, which one are they going to go for, 65 or 65A? If it's 65A, throw it out. I mean, what's the point of that?
Right.
And finally...
But first they have to vote yes on something.
First they have to vote yes.
Right.
They're pretty comfortable yes is going to happen. I mean, look at the numbers, 67 to 24.
Yeah.
So there's a pretty good chance that's going to happen. The question then is it a real medical program or is it bullshit, you know?
Right.
Okay, there's one left that he has out of 4. I'm going to let you guys each guess what you think it is.
South Dakota.
Damn, that's right.
Really?
Well done,
I thought that
Phil.
would be the least likely one. That was kind of a joke.
That's kind of what I thought. That's why I asked.
Unbelievable. Freaking South Dakota.
The Mount Rushmore state appears to have a really good shot at legalizing cannabis in some form. That's because South Dakota is the first state to put a medical cannabis measure and a recreational initiative in front of voters at the same time. Currently, cannabis is illegal throughout the state, as we know.
100% illegal.
Illegal. First up is a constitutional amendment A, which would legalize recreational cannabis and require the state's legislature to pass laws providing for the use of medical weed and hemp by no later than April 1st, 2022. So they're looking at a couple of years to get it
down the road.
Yeah. The other possibility is Measure 26, which supports establishing a medical marijuana program in South Dakota for patients with qualifying debilitating conditions. While it's unclear if South Dakota would have enough support to go from cannabis being completely legal to recreational, the numbers are pretty good on the enthusiasm for passing at least a medical program. So,
all right, so
those are your 4 states. So we've got what do we got? New Jersey, Arizona, Mississippi, and South Dakota.
Now, here's a question: have we to date had anyone from South Dakota download our
Yes, finally we do. Yeah,
we finally have someone from South Dakota. You're the last holdout.
We literally have tens of thousands of downloads. We have over 50 countries. In South Dakota never had a download recently, as a few months ago we talked about it on here. But yes, we do have a couple now.
Now we have.
We do have
now we have. Well, thank you, South Dakota.
Yeah.
Welcome aboard.
We're rooting for you.
And we're rooting for you. Now, folks, we're going to keep you updated as these and other states get closer. And these are going to be on the November ballot, I guess, right, Jay?
That's right. Yeah.
So as we get closer to Election Day, we're going to make sure the folks around these states and elsewhere know what's going on with the initiatives and what they need to do. And what you really need to do, say it with me now, vote pro-pot.
Pro-pot. We didn't do that I wasn't very well synchronized. But so, yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's going to be an interesting election. I mean, we're going from 33 to maybe 36, maybe as many as 40 states. We're getting there, man. Slowly but surely.
So what are you drinking over there, Jay?
I am drinking a red wine tonight. No wine? Brown liquor. I got a little bit of
I'm drinking
a
white wine, as it turns out.
Sissy.
Cheers.
White wine is very delicious. Thank you very little.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lightweight. I'm drinking decaffeinated sweet tea.
There you go.
Yeah, that's good too.
But I'm smoking some nom 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 nom.
Nom nom nom.
And I also, let me see what else I got. Some nom nom. I got some a gelato. I really like the Do-si-do strain, and so but they just came out with a cross between Do-si-do and Gelato 25. That's what's on deck for tonight.
Is that a strain of Girl Scout cookie?
That's what it sounds like.
No,
what do they come up with these names, man?
Do-si-do.
Okay.
Do you remember
what do you like about it?
Remember
Andrew?
square dancing in elementary school? No, Jay and I. We did it at Northlake. Did you do that
we were
at Flower
partners.
Valley?
That's right. I remember.
Were you partners?
No.
I always lead, so it's cool. What do you like about it, Andrew? What is it about that strain that you
The
like?
flavor. I like the flavor.
The flavor, yeah. Okay.
Very much like the flavor.
Okay. So you can actually pair your weed and your wine.
Yeah. Have you ever enjoyed pairing like a good steak with a nice Cabernet or Merlot, or like a
Hells
piece
yeah.
of sea bass or tilapia with a Sauvignon Blanc or personally I like Chenin Blanc.
Or
The good news
Budweiser.
is that you don't have to end pairing your wine with your meal. You can continue to pair wine with your cannabis.
That is good news.
Now, cannabis has your terpene profile. Every strain has a terpene profile, and terpenes are those elements, those compounds that give the cannabis flavor, not just cannabis, but many all plants, fruits, and their flavor and their aromas. So what you do is every strain has, especially if you buy it from a dispensary, you'll actually have a printed out terpene profile. It'll tell you what percentage of terpenes are in the strain.
No, I never noticed that, but they do.
They do, absolutely. It's very good. You should,
Faze talked about it.
note down.
Yeah.
Now,
I
if you're really serious
should.
about this, I'd recommend, or anyone who's really into cannabis, and get a notebook and start noting the strains and noting the terpenes, and start tasting it and go, well, that tastes lemony. If it has lemony, if it tastes like citrusy, could have limoncello, which is one of the terpenes that would have that flavor. Now, if it's a really sort of earthy flavor, that's myrcene. So what you do is you just get a strain and taste it, and then go, well, this has an earthy flavor or something. So I might want to pair that with a Pinot Noir or Shiraz or a Cabernet, so that earthy would pair well with the earthiness and the overtones of a Cabernet.
That makes sense.
So and then you just go from there, like a citrusy thing, like something that has a lot of lemon on. You might want to go with like a Chardonnay or a Sauvignon Blanc or a Chenin Blanc or something like that.
It's a little fruitier wine.
Yeah, a little fruity. That would complement those. And then just keep. And then there might be something that's piney, and you might want to, go with like a Pinot Grigio or something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's personal. Yeah, it's all personal taste. It really is. But what you do, I recommend keeping a little notebook and taking notes. Or what I do is I take I pull the sticker off the container that I get my cannabis from, and that has a list of all the things. And I save that. So I just put that on like in a notebook.
You must have a lot of stickers, bro.
Well, no. What
Sure, he's got his share.
Well, you see, when I first started, I was trying everything, but then after after a while, you sort of return to the ones you're going to like. Because every now and then you get one, you smell and go, ooh, that's not that green.
Not my thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So that's what you'd make edibles out of.
Well, I think as you see more of these cafes open up and these things, you're going to see a lot more of that,
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's one of the kind of wonderful things about cannabis is that, it's not just, chamomile tea is nice. It tastes good, gives you a nice feeling and relaxes you. Cannabis is kind of that same, a little kiss from Mother Earth type thing, and you can think of it the same way as you think of wines or beers or things like that. Just, each one has its own profile. And I think that's one of the kind of cool things about it.
That's true. But speaking of this, now what I'm talking about is smoking or vaping the cannabis to pair with wine. But when we're talking about edibles, and we were talking about this during our production meeting before the show, and that is, the problem with edibles is you can always taste the cannabis oil or the flower. Sometimes you can tell if it's made with flour or if it's an oil, and it just has like an aftertaste. Sometimes it's very. Now there's some edibles that you can get that a lot of them are, and don't get me wrong, most of them, especially the professionally made ones, are good. They taste great.
Yeah. They don't taste bad. Yeah,
right. They don't taste bad, but they're not. Some of them have that little, and there's nothing they can do about that. Now, some of them, I know personally, when I make edibles, I overcome that. I make a sour cherry gummy that the sourness of it, I make it a little extra sour. And so when you do that, you really taste the cherry and the sour, but you don't taste anything else. I mean, because it's so overpowering. And like we were saying earlier, like chocolates, there's not a lot of, like I've been surprised that there hasn't been some high-end chocolatier, because there's some great chocolatiers and pastry chefs that just do incredible stuff with chocolate. And I was wondering why none of them have really gotten into them. A few, relatively well-known guys have dabbled their toes in it. And I think the problem is that no matter what you do, you're never going to get it to taste like a delicious chocolate.
Like a premium chocolate, right?
You're always going to have to fight that flavor.
So that's why you mentioned before, Andrew, that part of the problem is you have a lot of cannabis chefs getting into chocolate, but you're not getting any chocolatiers getting into cannabis because of that.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. It's the people who are experts at cannabis and the people who are experts at chocolate are not overlapping.
Right.
You know, when I was in
they
California,
really haven't crossed over yet. I'm sorry, Jay.
No,
but one thing I've looked into this. What happened? I started looking into professional chef classes that taught about cannabis, and they're rare, few and far between. Now, Amsterdam University has a bunch of stuff, but that's the cannabis school.
Yeah,
but like the legitimate,
Right.
The Institute of Culinary Education or the Culinary Institute of America or some of the big schools, they don't have cannabis classes. I mean, but they're like the big serious schools. I mean, people spend tens of thousands of dollars. Oh, eventually, absolutely. I think Institute of Culinary Education will, because they just opened a branch in California, and that's my alma mater. I mean, that's where I went.
Right.
So of course I'm going to be a little biased towards them. And they're very hip, very cool. So I could see them maybe doing it.
You know, when I was in California, I went to a dispensary, and I got the best tasting edibles that I've had. And what it was a little chocolate ball. It was like a dark chocolate, and it was cannabis infused, really low, the way I like it, really low, like 5 milligrams, I think. But they were really tasty.
Right.
But they still weren't like, you
I
could
think
still
that's
tell
the
it was
same
there.
kind of phenomenon as the sour cherry. I mean, really dark chocolate is more bitter. I mean, chocolate that is unsweetened is a bitter flavor.
It's a bittersweet.
true.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet. So you get a little bit more of that bitter. It masks a little bit of that bitterness of the grassiness of the marijuana.
That, and the other thing is, they've been making edibles out in California for a long time.
That's
and
true.
the best
That's
edibles
true.
probably in the world are made in California by the cannabis chefs there.
Yeah, I
'Cause they've been
got
doing
some
it a
little
long time.
lemon balls, like those
Yeah.
little sour lemon. They were frickin', you would never know. They were delicious. They were like 10 milligrams, but they taste like the little lemon, sour lemon balls you buy. I mean, they were great. So
They're good. Yeah.
We
It's
owe
the
it
best
all
I've
to
had.
Brownie Mary.
Brownie. Who's Brownie Mary?
Brownie Mary, she's like legendary. Steve
yeah,
D'Angelo talked about her. He said she would be one of the few people, that when we're talking about Mount Rushmore, cannabis, the cannabis Mount Rushmore,
yeah.
he mentioned Brownie Mary, so
remember
she might be up there
okay.
too.
yeah, we
And
asked
she
Steve,
like invented the pot brownie, and
When
really
Steve was on the
why
show,
not she
Steve-
invented it? She made it famous.
when Steve D'Angelo was on the
I
show,
thought
we
Alice
asked
B.
him,
Toklas made the pot brownie
he
thing.
asked him who he'd put on the Mount Rushmore of weed, and that you're right. I'd never heard of her, and that was
Brownie
one of,
Mary.
I'd read about her.
Yeah.
So what else is new, Phil?
Well, there is a new lawsuit in the making filed against the Drug Enforcement Agency that is challenging the legal standard used to ban cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act. And this is significant. Cannabis researcher Sue Sisley of the Scottsdale Research Institute in Arizona has joined with 3 military veterans, and they filed this suit together, saying that the DEA has applied the wrong standard for classifying cannabis as a Schedule I drug. And what's significant about this is that they're going after the whole legal underpinnings of the Schedule I classification. And not so much the results or ramifications of it. They're going after it in a the whole basis for it. She said Sisley made news recently for her groundbreaking research into the potential benefits of cannabis in treating PTSD. You're familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder. Hence the 3 military veterans who are joining her on this suit. The lawsuit is specifically challenging the DEA's long-held contention that cannabis has no accepted use in medical treatment. And that's really what, half of the problem, half of the criteria of Schedule I, it has no accepted use in medical treatment, and it has a potential for abuse. I asked Dr. Bierman, you recall that interview, I asked him point blank, are either of those things true? Without hesitation, he said, absolutely not.
Right. Everybody knows that. Yeah.
Everybody knows that, but this suit is the absolutely not suit.
That's interesting. That's an interesting angle to take.
And she's attacking the first part of that, which is that it has no accepted medical treatment, medical use, and she's got research to say that it does. So the opening brief's scheduled for August, so we'll keep you posted on that. But
where do you think it'll go, Phil? Where do you think do you have any
Well, she's filing the suit with the Ninth Circuit of the Court of Appeals.
Cool.
And Ninth Circuit is the traditionally very liberal one, so she'd probably get a friendly court there. And if the suit is, if they uphold her law, or strike down the DEA Schedule 1 classification on the basis of her suit, certainly the DEA could appeal it to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court will either choose to listen to it or not. And if they choose to listen to it, they'll either choose to uphold it or not. But I have a feeling that if it gets the favorable ruling from the Ninth Circuit,
the Supreme Court might leave it alone.
Schedule 1 could be a dead issue. That would be
amazing. That's pretty smart.
Because once you've pulled out the legal, basis for it, it's got nothing to stand on, and that's the end of it. So that's a significant thing.
Well, also, the United States government has a patent on using cannabis for treating tumors.
Since the 70s.
Right.
Yeah.
So how can you say it doesn't have any medical value if you have a freaking patent on using it for a medical reason?
Yeah. Well, there's an easy way you can say that. You can lie.
Not to mention,
That's how you can say it.
Other drugs. I mean, there's several synthetic THC and CBD drugs that are being used that are on the market.
Right.
So how can they make the argument it's not, has no medical value?
That's what's going to be before the Ninth Circuit.
Right.
And unlike the Supreme Court, where you need a majority of 5, on the Ninth Circuit, on a circuit court, you only need a majority of 2.
Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't think it'd be any problem in that particular court.
It's hard to say. You never know once it goes to the court what's gonna happen. I mean, you're making best guess, and I think you're right on that best guess. But we'll see. If that happens, of course, Schedule 1 gets struck down, then that's kind of a whole domino effect for the whole federal prohibition.
Oh man, everything
don't you
changes.
think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is. I mean, it's going to take something like this, or it's not surprising that something like this could make the whole house of cards crumble.
Right. So we'll keep you posted on that, folks, and any of you interested and prominent organizations out there who want to file an amicus brief on her behalf in the Arizona Scottsdale Research Institute in Arizona, please jump right in.
So let me ask you guys a question here.
All right.
I have always assumed that concentrates get you much higher than flower. When you're doing, one of the heavy concentrates. According to an article out of the French Toast by Brendan Bures, the article says concentrates really won't make you higher than smoking weed. This is based on a study. A new study published in JAMA Psychiatry examined how smoking traditional cannabis flower versus concentrates affects users. Researchers concluded that consuming concentrates will boost THC levels in your blood, but won't cause you to become significantly more high compared to conventional cannabis. Surprisingly, we found that potency did not track with intoxication levels, according to Cinnamon Bidwell, who is the leader of the trial in the study. Cinnamon,
cool name.
Yeah, it could be a stripper. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. Cinnamon or a horse? Maybe she's a racehorse. I don't know. Anyway, University of Colorado.
You can edit that out, can't you?
Get some emails, man.
University of Colorado Boulder researchers recruited 121 participants who regularly consumed legal cannabis flower or concentrates.
All right.
They were then randomly divided into a high THC group and a low THC group. 4 types of cannabis products in total were used for the study. Number 1, high THC concentrates, 90% THC. Yowza. Number 2, what they call low THC concentrates, 70% THC. Number 3, high THC flower at 24%, and number 4 is low THC flower at 16%. Okay, all the products were purchased at legal marijuana stores, making this one of the first cannabis studies to use real-world products, which is interesting.
Yeah.
On the day of the testing, researchers drew blood from the participants and asked them to complete a baseline assessment. Measurements of mood, intoxication levels, cognitive function, and balance were made at 3 junctures: before they smoked, right after they smoked, and then an hour after smoking. Regular concentrate users had higher THC levels at all points, which makes sense, right? Okay. Regardless of the potency, however, all participants had similar intoxication levels based on balance coordination and cognitive impairment. Researchers found that balance was about 11% worse after cannabis among the user groups, and memory was compromised. But the impairment faded within an hour. So people, these results, researchers emphasize, came from normal cannabis users who have varying degrees of tolerance. Inexperienced or novice consumers could experience different outcomes. So if you're somebody that doesn't use cannabis a lot, you don't want to go out and hit the 90% THC concentrate, so you're going to be hating life. I got a feeling, But that's not what you'd expect. The results.
Well, no, it isn't in a sense. I mean, now I smoke flower and I vape, and the vaping doesn't get me any higher than the flower.
Right, but they're all the same
that's
percentage.
Not what they're talking. They're not talking about vape. They're talking about shatter and butter,
and
and dabbing,
and stuff.
That's what they're talking about. Now, I've tried some of that stuff.
I've never tried.
I don't know if I've told you that, gentleman, but I have tried these.
Have you?
For research purposes.
No way.
Yes. Now, and I'll tell you what. When I first got my card, I tried them all and everything. And for a while there, I would sometimes get some, but I realized that just like one puff off that, and one puff, I only take like one or 2 puffs, and although you definitely get a buzz off that, but I would almost like really not much more than just taking a regular just puff off a bong hit,
Right,
for me.
I think it's a matter of how many milligrams in volume, what the volume of the THC you're getting. 20 milligrams is 20 milligrams.
Right.
And it's and whether you get that through dabbing or smoking flower, you're going to get 20 or an edible. You're going to get that amount of THC and or CBD in your system, and you're going to get that amount of high.
Right. Well, I definitely take one hit off a dab, then take one hit off a joint. You're going to feel more from the dab.
I would think, yeah.
You would think, yeah. But here's my question: but you sometimes it's you get so high and it doesn't matter what you're smoking.
Beyond the point of return, yeah.
But what I'm saying is, what about taking these concentrates and using those in edibles? That's where I'm going. That's where I'm experimenting now.
Gotcha.
Right. The RSO oil
and shatter and butters and all kinds of things. Yeah, that's because one, the flavor, you don't at all get any of that chlorophyll straw flavor that you would have using just regular flour.
Right. Well, I assume what they're saying is, Phil, you mentioned say 20 milligrams. But if you do a bong hit, you might get, I don't know how many, let's 7, 8,
say
10
milligrams.
Yeah, 10 milligrams. But if you do a bong hit of a dab, let's say, I would assume you're going to get far more, because it's 90% THC. Yeah. I would assume you're going to get far more than 20 milligrams.
If you inhale the same volume,
right, exactly,
at a higher percentage, but
that's true. Yeah,
I think each of us kind of the way the manner in which we smoke it or whatever we're kind of self-regulating. When you're having too much.
Right. I don't know. I've seen these videos on YouTube of some of these kids, man. Have you seen those where they have these huge dabs, man, and these guys, my God. Yeah, and then they show a video of the guy 15 minutes later, and he's just a vegetable. So I don't know, man.
I have no idea what that's like.
That's not
I think that's kind of a waste, because if you just take a couple small puffs, you definitely feel the effect. And all those big puffs, you feel it, but after a certain point, how wasted can you be?
I don't like. I'm a microdose guy, man. I'm not into that. That's at my age. So.
Well, we learned that decades ago, especially when you were rationing your weed. Just take a couple of hits. That's good enough. If you smoke a bunch of it, just after a while,
it just
doesn't
makes
make a difference.
Just wasting you're high as shit. Especially if you're drinking too. It's like, what's the point, dude?
Yeah, but I mean,
you're right.
It is kind of the same question. It's like, what gets you more drunk, beer or wine or liquor? Well, I mean,
turns on how much
the same amount of beer, and if you drink the same amount of bourbon as you do a beer, you're going to get much more drunk. But an ounce of alcohol is still an ounce of alcohol.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's a kind of an interesting development. The coronavirus may have spurred a shift in how Congress views cannabis legalization. Have you heard some of that talk?
Yeah.
No.
Cannabis executives apparently are pointing to signs of a change in attitudes, noting that half of the states in the U.S., not to mention Washington D.C., they've all categorized dispensaries as essential businesses. So they're allowing them, or in some cases, ordering them to remain open. And a lot of these cannabis executives feel that this is kind of a vote of confidence that could prod some reluctant lawmakers in Washington to rethink their positions. What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely. I absolutely agree. The other thing I believe is through this pandemic and all the turmoil on the streets today, that we look at marijuana and all of a sudden really doesn't seem that bad anymore.
No.
Right.
I think a lot of people, even conservative people, are going, I'm
not scared of this anymore.
I'm not scared of it anymore. Just freaking legalize it. And also they're going, they actually, not a single medical marijuana dispensary in the United States was ordered to shut down.
Right.
That's
medical,
correct.
yeah,
So,
that's right.
So obviously,
if you say so, I don't know.
Oh man, I didn't hear of any.
No, I think that's
correct. We did hear of recreational dispensaries that were ordered to shut down.
Yeah, Massachusetts, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, right, right.
Yeah, so I think you're right, man. I think there's a lot to it. Right now, everyone's going, Jesus, guys. Now it's getting. Let me say this so everyone can understand it. How I really feel about this. It's getting fucking ridiculous that it's still Schedule 1
now,
and it's still illegal.
Don't candy coat it.
Tell us what you really feel.
No, it's fucking ridiculous. I think
it
more
is
and more
fucking
people
ridiculous.
are just going,
fucking ridiculous.
It's fucking ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It is absolutely. It's idiotic. Only a friggin' moron and an idiot would say it needs to stay illegal. It's a gateway drug. What about the children?
What about the children?
Well,
here's what Americans...
He's not drinking Clorox. He's not going to... What, he's going to break it? He's going to fire up the bong? Right? Yeah. Okay, some little kid's going to figure out that. Right, yeah.
Here's what Michael Bronstein, he's the co-founder of the American Trade Association of Cannabis and Hemp. Here's what he said, quote, "The COVID-19 response has shown just how critical cannabis is to the overall economy and job markets in a number of these states. It's getting increasingly hard for members of Congress to ignore that." I think he's absolutely right. This is it's an economic issue. It's a civil rights issue. Not in the sense, but an individual right
issue.
It's a health issue,
and it's a spiritual issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an issue. It's just damn well being an American.
And now it's a financial issue with all the issues, all the problems states are looking at with their economies and their budgets.
It's a fiscal issue.
Yes, a lot of politicians are going to be looking for money, and how obvious is it that they can raise millions, hundreds of millions,
buttloads?
Why would they not?
You know what marijuana does? Alcohol intoxicates you. Marijuana is a relaxant and actually just makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I have the constitutional right for the pursuit of happiness. So it seems to me I have the constitutional right to smoke weed.
You certainly do. And I will stand up for that. That's right. Thomas Jefferson agrees. So are you going to sit there and go against Thomas Jefferson? God damn it.
Or George Jefferson, for that matter.
Or George. What you talking about, Weezy? All right. Well, folks, we've had a whole lot, maybe a little bit too much fun today, but we've had a whole lot of fun bringing you our second year anniversary episode.
That's right.
Episode 120 of Vote Pro Podcast, and we're so glad you were here to join us. Get in touch with us and tell us how you feel about any of these topics or some other topics that you have in mind. Go to Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review, tell a friend about us. What else?
Send us an email at podcast@VoteProPot.com, and we've got a message line.
We do.
240-257-2441. Give us a call and let us know what you think. And join our Facebook group.
You know, every week there's so much going on in the cannabis industry and politics that we can't cover it on our podcast. So we try to share as much information as we can on social networking. So if you feel like us and you think it's fucking ridiculous that marijuana is still illegal, please go to LinkedIn, Facebook, Internet, Twitter, and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.